Welcome, everyone. Deputy Mayor. Welcome to the Arts and Recreation Community Policies Committee for May 18th. It is 6:02. We'll get started. So I'll call the meeting to order. I'm not sure if everyone had time to read the agenda, but if we could have a mover and seconder. Councillor Stephen, Councillor Sanik. All those in favor? All those opposed? Let it be shown that Deputy Mayor Amos is opposed to the agenda. Confirmations for minutes. Okay. There are no confirmation minutes for this meeting. I'm going to ask for, is there any disclosure for pecuniary interest? Seeing none, we'll move on. No delegations. No briefings. And brings us to business. A, sports fields maintenance programs. We have staff to introduce. Ms. Turner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Director Santucci and I are pleased to be here this evening with report number 23-004 with regards to sports field maintenance program. This report follows a motion that was put forward by Council on March 7th, 2023. That staff report back to the Arts, Recreation and Community Policies Committee prior to the summer of 23, identifying sports field maintenance improvements that will be implemented starting this season.
Thank you. Ms. Santucci, would you like to add anything? No? Okay. Questions from committee? Deputy Mayor Amos.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you. A couple questions in regards to the report. I noticed that the recommendation to allow fields for to be resting on a rotational basis. Do we have enough fields and based on participants to do this?
Ms. Turner.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I can start and then Director Santucci may want to add a couple of comments, but Councillor Amos, we actually do. The recommendation that is forward tonight or that's within this report is a little bit different than what we used to do. Years ago, it was about basically bringing a field offline for the whole entire season and resting it. What Director Santucci and her team have come up with is actually pulling 4 or 5 fields off for the season, or I'm sorry, for a month over the entire season. They have a set schedule and that has been communicated to the user group. So the field would be off season for a 30-day period. Groups would be rerouted to fields that we are not using. So there's not 100% utilization out there. We do have a few fields and a few diamonds that do have capacity within them.
Ms. Santucci, you have something to add?
Yeah, just following up and through you. This just allows us time to do our maintenance and then give the field a little bit of time to rest so that that grass seed or whatever the maintenance was that we did is able to take effect and it results in a better field. Again, it's just a shorter period of time as opposed to taking a field for the entire season. We'd take it for 4 or 5 weeks, do our maintenance, allow that a little bit of time to rest and then bring the field back online.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
A follow-up, please. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think this is an excellent idea. The resting of the fields is, from my understanding, Ms. Santucci, it would be 1 week of maintenance and 3 weeks of resting for the field. A follow-up to that is that would require, obviously the lawn or the field would grow quite a bit and require proper grass clipping. as a result of that, we would need to have those fields relined. From my understanding, they would need to be relined because 1 month of growth, any sort of white chalking or caulking would be lost. And right now, our current policy is that the user groups line their own fields. Have we changed that policy, and are we now lining our fields to assist with this endeavor?
I'm going to apologize. I did lose signal partway through that, but I believe that the question is, once that field starts to grow, whether we will continue to line that field. The fields are lined currently by the user groups, and that policy has not changed at this point in time. We did commit to coming back in the first quarter of 2024, where we will compare our levels of service with levels of service in other communities, and that we would look at that sort of thing at that point in time.
Okay, I understand that. I guess I get what you're saying, absolutely. I think we'll be using, I think the user groups will be using more chalk because of how we're doing our endeavor to rest the fields, as opposed to every other week or every week they're chalking. Now they're going to have to put a heavier chalk on to get those lines back up to play again. My 2 cents, but I get what you're doing and I support it. I'm just worried about the user groups and the costs that they are now going to incur on some of that. My next comment is in regards to the fields that are not going offline, but the regular, just the fields that are staying online. We did get complaints. I got complaints at the door, and I know Councillor Osonic has brought this up in the past. I don't want to speak for her, but the fields have not always been kept. The grass cuttings have not always been kept up on certain fields, and specifically the rectangular fields. The user groups have expressed some concern in that. I did read the report over, and from what I gathered, the user groups are satisfied with the proposals, and I didn't see any comments in regards to how the grass is being cut or the maintenance of the grass right now. Can you make any comment as to where the groups are with that?
Yeah, thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. We did not hear a lot of comments on the grass cutting. Our process would be to cut that weekly, and then we also work around tournament schedules. So when there is a tournament, they often will get a second cut before the weekend for that tournament. We have done a lot of communication with the user groups in terms of complaints in a process that there aren't things that are working for them, that they have a very formalized process that they can go through to make sure that that information gets to us. But we did not hear a lot of concerns on the grass cutting in any of our user group meetings.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you. Any other member of the committee? Oh. Mr. Stabinsky, you'd like to add a comment?
Yes, thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to add, Karen, to your point, we do have some new equipment which will be arriving this spring that will help us specifically with those grass clippings, where we will be able to deal with some of those concerns. We also have scheduled some training that will assist us in setting our mower heights appropriately with our suppliers. So we do have some training come up that will help us with that, because setting those heights for our sports fields obviously is a very important thing. We want to get a very consistent playing surface. And also, I also hear from user groups, the shortest possible is what they always ask for, but we also want to make sure we get the longevity of our grass. And so there's a balance there. And so we will be having some training coming up that will assist staff with some of those things, where we can make sure we are, when we do the maintenance on our mowers, we're reviewing and making sure those standards are set and the heights are set appropriately to help out with some of that.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And it's great to hear that the staff are getting training and new equipment's coming. So it's just a bonus for everybody. Well done.
Thank you. I thought I saw a hand from a member of committee. So, Councillor Sanik.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. So this 2023 turf management plan looks fantastic compared to what we have been doing. And thanks for all the work in putting it together and for, taking it to the next level with the aeration, the top dressing, the overseeding, the very cutting, the rolling. This should be really good. I'm really hoping that then all the parents, all the coaches, everybody's good. I heard a comment last year that when one of the soccer clubs went to Belleville, that like the parents were so infatuated with the grass there that at the halftime they took off their shoes and they just walked barefoot on the field, going like, "This is Belleville, right? This field's a dream." And so it would be great if our turf management plan, the parents would do that right here in Kingston at halftime as well. One question: so, do our premier fields? Did we have like underground water sprinkler systems for our fields? Like, I think I saw that in the report, a mention of the underground. So like which fields do all of them, like all of the A fields, or I've just never seen them on, probably because I don't live right next to one of these fields.
Who would like to address that?
I can start. Some of our fields do, but I am going to pass it to Troy, who has a better idea of which of those fields actually do have the irrigation systems on them.
So thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. So good question, Councillor Senek. So a number or most of our Class A fields do have irrigation. Those irrigation systems, we run typically very early in the mornings. That's why you're not seeing them where we will run them. But no, not all of our fields do not have irrigation. We have a couple ball fields that have irrigation, and then a number of our Class A soccer fields have irrigation.
Okay, thanks. I always wondered because some of them stay so green, right? It's like there must be a trick here. And then for let's see, cut the weekly. One question, yeah, there was some other soccer one I had, but then just one question about baseball and the dugouts. So I know that if we were to supply dugouts, it would be an extra $200,000 that we would have to allocate to our capital budget. For the diamonds that do have dugouts, were those paid for by the city, or were they paid for by the user groups? Just because I think it was during the election, I heard that one user group, they actually did the dugout, and so like, is that true? And yeah, I guess so. If the city did the dugouts for 200,000, like, would that be the first time that the city has ever paid for the dugouts?
Mr. Stambisky?
Yeah, so through you, Mr. Chair, thank you, Councillor Stanek. So, for example, the most recent dugouts that we added were dugouts that we added at Legion or Veterans Field. And what we did there was we did a partnership with KBA where they had a service, or they were able to get labor through Corrections Canada. So Corrections Canada and them partnered to get essentially free labor to be able to assist in building them. And the city provided and did all of the work in preparation. So we provided all the lumber, all the materials to do the work, and they were able to provide the labor to build them. I believe something similar was done back in the Woodbine days, where some of the dugouts in Woodbine were constructed in a partnership together with the user groups, where the city supplied and the user groups were able to supply some labor to do the work.
I see. Thank you. And through you, Mr. Chair. So the 200,000, that's it would be to do more dugouts. That would be the labor and the material supplied by the city.
Yeah, so through you, Mr. Chair, that's exactly right, Councillor Stanek. So that is our rough estimate of what it would take to build dugouts at our diamonds, essentially with contracted services, considering the price of lumber in today's world and what it would take for contractors to do it. Because at this moment, Public Works does not have the resources to be able to put enough bodies on that work to get it completed.
I see. And then just like the final question about the dugouts through you, Mr. Chair, is do you know if Corrections Canada, like if we could, if the user groups could strike that same deal in this day and age with Corrections Canada, or have you heard anything that wouldn't be allowed anymore? I would hope it still is, but with the way
Yes.
things change all the time, I
But
just,
through you, Mr. Chair, I know on an unrelated item, there has been some changes on Corrections Canada because they're struggling with the supervision that's required for those people to do the work, but it's definitely something we could look into.
yeah, interesting. Okay, thank you very much. Thanks.
Councillor Stephen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you. Just sort of two questions. So first thing, I was really impressed with the record of engagement. I thought it was really incredible, actually, how many different kinds of issues came up that Public Works can address proactively. So well done, staff. I think that's really setting us up for success this season. So that's something to be really proud of. Is this the first time that engagement like this has been done pre-season?
Ms. Turner?
Through you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the question, Councillor Stephen. No, the Recreation and Leisure Services Department normally takes the lead with the user group meetings with Public Works in attendance, but there are regular user group meetings every year annually. There's preseason, there should be one mid-season and then one at the end of this season on several different items. So it could be everything from Public Works, maintenance issues that could come up, to allocation, to tournaments and special events. Basically a standing agenda. So we have done them before. Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. And through you, Mr. Chair, one of the other things I noticed in the report, if I was understanding it correctly, was there were a couple of tables talking about field usage, and there were the rectangular fields and the baseball diamonds, and some of them had 0% bookings. Is I think what I understood. Is that correct?
Ms. Turner?
Through you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Councillor Stephen. There are definitely fields that do not have a high usage rate on them. As Mr. Stabinski and Director Santucci have mentioned, we have Class A, B, and C fields. So A are normally our larger baseball diamonds and larger rectangular fields that have irrigation and lights on them. Those are the ones that, everybody would like. But we do have some smaller fields and smaller diamonds that have a very, very low usage rate on them, just because with the ebbs and flows in the sports, you could have a couple of years where you have a lot of influx at the younger age group, more of the Timbits, 4, 5, 6, 7. Those diamonds are heavily used, and less at the older kids, and it just cycles its way through.
Okay, so that sort of addresses my follow-up question was, are there any plans in the works moving forward? I realize this discussion is about the turf care, but just in future, does the city have conversations about those fields and if they, could be enhanced or repurposed, or is it just something that you kind of have as community stock that people can just use if they want to?
Ms. Turner?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Another great question, Councillor Stephen. So a couple of different things there. They're always open for the public to use when they're not permitted. So that's number one. Number two is that through the Parks and Recreation Plan and the update that was brought to council back in 2021, we would obviously take a look at any sort of existing fields and what do we have there and how could we enhance those fields. So for example, prior to building a new rectangular field, we would take a look at the inventory and could we add lighting to it to get us to what we need for the demand in the community. The same with baseball diamonds as well. So yes, we're constantly looking at how we can enhance them, whether it's lighting, is it an outfield fence? Is it a bigger, for ball diamonds, is it a bigger infield clay area? Basically, how can we use what we have in the inventory before we start to put money into building a new facility?
Okay, thank you, Ms. Turner.
Councillor Ridge, would like to add to this?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you. So just a question about when staff are turning over to begin full maintenance cycle of the fields and diamonds. What date is that exactly?
Through you, Mr. Chair. After the long weekend in May, we switch our staff over from their spring schedules into their summer schedules. So come May 23rd, our staff will move into their full summer schedule, which will mean we'll be full staffed at our sports fields.
Okay, and follow-up, Mr. Chair, if possible. Then if that's the case, and with this new maintenance plan, I think that if there were any issues about maintenance of the fields, that they would be taken care of in due order as a result of this new plan and staff working full-time on that. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, that's correct. Our goal is to deal with any of those issues that come up. There may be bigger issues that do take a little bit longer to deal with. We're not going to change the fields overnight. We're working really hard to make that correction as quick as we can, but unfortunately we can't snap our fingers and have perfect fields overnight, but we're definitely working to do what we can.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much for your responses. They're greatly appreciated. I feel that about the finger snapping thing, certainly.
Thank you. One just quick question. I did read the report, and thank you for the engagement with all the stakeholders. I did notice that there was a lot of questions and concerns brought up during those meetings, and I'm sure it was just one or more. My simple question is there going to be a follow-up with their concerns?
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, definitely we're planning on having a mid-season meeting coming up, into July, where we'll follow up with any of those. I think of most of the issues that were raised at that user group, the majority of them have already been resolved and we've dealt with them. Again, we'll continue to do that, and then we will have a mid-season meeting with the user groups to see if there's other things that we've missed or things that we need to follow up with. And again, we've clarified a process this year if people do have issues, how they would go through that process, and also an emergency number that if there's something that's immediate, that they can get a hold of someone to deal with those right away as well.
Thank you. Last chance for any more. Councillor Sanik.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I found the question that for soccer that I was looking for. So it's just about tournaments. So we have like 2 huge tournaments in June, first weekend of June, and then I think it's like the second weekend of June. And that tournament's grown from like 16 teams to like 160. So for tournaments, do we put out more garbage cans and more recycling cans at the fields? Or is that the responsibility of the user groups? It's the cities, right?
Who would like to answer that?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I believe that we do put out more cans based on the requests coming in for those.
Okay. So yeah, I just wanted to confirm then June 3rd, 4th, and 10th and 11th, like huge number of teams coming in on those 2 weekends, the boys, then the girls playing, and like what I've heard like in past years, and I know it's addressed in the report, is like we try to get the user groups to help clean up the fields and tell the coaches, to remind the players to be respectful and throw, the pop bottles and water bottles in our recycling. But yeah, those are 2 huge tournaments coming up. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Last chance? Deputy Mayor? Okay. Mr. Clerk, do we have anyone in attendance? Either virtually? Well, virtually?
I can confirm to you, Mr. Chair, we do not.
Do not? Okay. Considering this is informational report, there's no need for a vote, correct? So we shall move on to motions, which there are none. There are no other business. No correspondence. Date of next meeting is Thursday, June 22nd, 2023. Do I have a mover seconder for adjournment? Deputy Mayor Amos? Councillor Ridge? All those in favor? That one passed unanimously. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your evening.